Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Lead Skill Show. As always, I'm your host, Oscar, and with me today I have a very interesting guest. Her name is Cyndi Thomason, and she is someone that has founded more than one company. So that is always great to get to know their story, get to talk to them, learn a little bit more about how they started, why they decided to start their company, and then, why they are deciding to open the second, third, or fourth company as well. We like just talking to entrepreneurs, learning about the entrepreneurial journey, challenges, background, and of course, the most important thing is how they have actually stayed in business and been successful. So without further ado, Cyndi, thank you for being a guest in my podcast.
Thanks for having me, Oscar. Excited to talk with you today.
Of course, me too, and it's my pleasure. So, Cyndi, I always like starting the podcast with the question, can you tell us a little bit more about you, your company, the new one as well, and what each company does?
Okay, sure. Well, I started my first company. It was just a consulting firm. I had a friend who needed some help, and it was Cyndi Thomason Consulting. But after a few years of working with her, I realized her CPA suggested we move to QuickBooks Online. And so I was going to her office and doing all the QuickBooks desktop stuff. But when we moved online, I just saw a huge opportunity. I was homeschooling my daughter. She had some learning disabilities, so it meant me traveling to take her to tutors. And so it was really perfect for me to be able to work from home and have the flexibility to take care of my daughter. So after a few years of consulting under my name, I decided to brand a bookkeeping business where we did remote bookkeeping. And that's when BooksKeep was born in 2014. And this past year, we started an advisory firm called Your Profit Team. We created that because we felt like the brand BooksKeep was kind of pigeonholing us into people thinking that's all we did was bookkeeping, even though we've been doing advisory since 2015. We just never quite got the growth that I expected. And so we launched a new brand this year for the advisory, CFO, Profit First Consulting, and Cash Flow Forecasting. We launched that in January of this year.
Okay. Thank you for that. I actually see, I see and talk to a lot of people that either started, just a bookkeeping firm, or they have their own accounting or CPA firm. And now they're actually either starting new companies or just adding that advisory, side to things. And I think that's very smart on people that do that, because at the end of the day, as the person or the company that is looking day after the numbers, the financials, etc., you guys are the trusted advisors, to actually help entrepreneurs and help other businesses, with decisions, and not only report after the fact.
Right. And that's what I tell the team. The bookkeeping firm, we're kind of looking backwards, but the Your Profit team is looking forward. Everything that we're doing is forecasting what cash flow is going to be like in the future, what the P&L and the balance sheet and the cash flow statement are going to look like in the future, helping the clients model out their ideas for what could happen, and so that they can make better decisions going forward. The historical data is really important. We need that to understand where we've been and what's worked in the past. It's kind of our measuring stick, if you will, but it's not enough to guide all our decision making going forward. And so when we talk internally, we make that distinction. One's kind of backward looking and one looks forward.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's one of the big things, right? When people decide to add that or start another brand, another company, like in your case, is the fact that you guys have already been doing that to a degree before, right? Mm-hmm. But you need to add that layer of differentiation, right? Instead of just keeping the old one. And I think that's, again, like I said, it's a very smart thing to do. It's something that, sometimes I've helped some of my clients with, because even though they're already doing it, it's one thing is to do it and have the client be used to you helping them with that. And another completely different is actually adding that to the messaging, right? And communicating to others like, hey, we're not just, a bookkeeping firm or an accounting firm. We're also doing, advisory, fractional CFO, and that sort of stuff. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. And for us, I think our name, BooksKeep, kind of pigeonholed us a little bit. And so we wanted to break out of that. And something else that's been kind of interesting is the clients that we bring in to the advisory firm, to Your Profit team, most of the time their books are a mess. And it's really an easy downsell. I use that term, kind of tongue in cheek, because I don't consider bookkeeping beneath the advisory in any way. But it's an easy sell for the client to go, oh, well, you've helped me so much on this advisory. Please clean my books up. And that has been a much easier sell than it was going the other way. And because we tried it for 10 years and it was harder to get people to move from bookkeeping to advisory. But it's been proven much different for us to go from advisory. The level of trust is there where the clients are like, yeah, please get my book straight.
Oh wow, that's actually very interesting. I hadn't thought about that, and I think that yeah, like you said, it's not a downsell, right? It's an
No,
add-on,
cross
but
sell. Let's
yeah,
say it that way.
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. But at the end of the day, like that's the foundation, right? If
Hmm.
that those books are not 100%, then everything else, it's not going to be 100%. You need to have the foundation
For
first.
sure.
Okay, thank you for that. And how different are the clients that you have right now, or that you're getting right now, versus the ones like your first clients? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I'll start with BooksKeep because BooksKeep, when I first founded the firm, it came from a friend needing some help. And then she referred me to other people, and it was somewhat local. So it was more geographic oriented. And then another friend from an hour away started a virtual assistant business, and she needed help with getting her clients. So it was word of mouth, but pretty, within a couple of hours from where I lived. I went to the very first QuickBooks Connect, and I think that was 2014. And at QuickBooks Connect, I had the chance to hear Mike Michalowicz speak about Profit First. And he gave us a book, and I read it on the plane ride home, and it really changed everything for me because I could tell it was a worry I had in the back of my mind that my clients weren't making any money. And I'm like, how long am I going to be in this business with clients that really aren't making money? And so I went back and I talked to them about Profit First, and we started to implement it in their businesses. It really made a huge difference. And so I reached out to Mike's organization, Profit First Professionals, and I joined. And that relationship started me on this advisory path because I could see how cash flow was impacting my clients in addition to the financial reporting that we were doing. I could see how the Profit First advice was impacting my clients and impacting my business as well. So in my first year with Profit First, Mike was my coach and he advised me to pick a niche. And I looked at my client base and started trying to think about, okay, who do I really like to work with? And what do I not like to do? Like running running 2 hours down the road to solve somebody's computer problem when, they just didn't have something hooked up right, or
Yeah.
picking up this box of receipts. And, that was what it was like at the time. But my e-commerce, I had one e-commerce client. My e-commerce client was very tech savvy. She lived nowhere close. She did everything online. So there was no resistance to giving me access to her QuickBooks or her bank accounts or her Amazon store, and I could do my work without ever having to leave home. And so that's one of the reasons I started exploring the e-commerce niche. And now we focus 100% on e-commerce. We have since 2015. We have over 100 clients that are in the e-commerce space. I have probably a handful left. Like I still have client number 2 and 3, those folks that have been around for a long time and are still doing well that are outside of the space. For the most part, it's our expertise in e-commerce and Profit First with e-commerce that brings people to us.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that story. I think that's very interesting, especially you having been personally mentored by Michael.
Yeah.
I know he's a very big author now. And since we're in the subject, I would like to ask you, what are the most common financial mistakes that you see e-commerce entrepreneurs make, and how does the customized Profit First system address them?
Well, many of our clients, they kind of underestimate the impact of cash flow. When you have to outlay tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars for inventory, make a 30% down payment for a product that's going to be manufactured overseas, and then 30 days lead time for manufacture, 60 days possibly on the water, you're out that cash, and before they ship it, the vendor wants the balance. So you're out a substantial amount of cash before you ever sell anything. And so one of the biggest challenge is that our e-commerce clients have is they fail to understand the impact that that's going to have on their cash flow. And it means that they have to be able to sell through some product enough to place that next order before they've actually sold everything. So it just is a rolling problem. And if you get started off poorly, then you're looking to solve that problem with debt. And the margins are just super thin till you pay all the Amazon fees, you pay for your product. Now you've got tariffs on top of your product cost, and then the advertising spend, the contribution margins are just pretty thin. So being able to sell through and generate enough cash to make that next inventory buy is critical, and our clients just don't plan far enough ahead for that.
100%. So actually, the business that I had that I was telling you about a few years back that I exited was something similar. We weren't really in e-com. We did dabble in e-com a little bit, but we were wholesalers and we had our own private label, brands of music instruments. And so I 100% agree with what you were saying. Even though we were selling wholesale, we were, giving credit. So for us, it was about an 8-month period between I pay up front, for the instruments to be manufactured. They come in the boat, they get here, I get them, I start, advertising to my clients. We got this new, container with this kinds of instruments, and then they would, buy them, and it would take them, we gave 30-day credit, but honestly, most of them paid 45, 60 days.
Yeah.
So all in all, it was like an 80-day period.
Yeah. Yeah.
An 8-month period to sell 100% of that
Yeah.
container from when I paid it. So
Yeah,
it is.
and a lot of e-commerce folks now are thinking that they can go to retail and that will solve a lot of their problems, but they don't realize these retail companies, they're looking at extended payment times. They don't turn around, sell something and send it to you in 2 weeks. At least you got that going for you with Amazon. But in retail, they're going to string you along, 30, 60. I've seen 180 days before. You just have to have some cash to be able to play. And people get excited and they think, I'm going to throw all my money into this inventory, and they don't realize that hamstrings them pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree completely. I was the CEO of that company, so I was the one, dealing with all of that. And I always told my staff, thankfully we did have some investors in the beginning, so that we were able to grow and be able to get that finance. But I remember exactly 1 year to the date when our first container arrived, we were basically about to go bankrupt. And it was just because, we couldn't get the people to pay us in time in order for us, to pay everything that we needed to pay as well. And, there was some revamping there, with collecting and everything. But I always told my staff, please don't come and tell me, let's go to Walmart. I got a contact at Walmart. It's like, no, we're still.
That's a whole different set of problems.
Like, no, but yeah, thank you for sharing that. And, I'd like to ask you, and I think this is something that, a lot of the people have questions on is, as you were growing, as you were scaling, what were some of the biggest obstacles that you faced, in BooksKeep?
At first, it was finding good people, but that I feel like we were blessed and we were able to solve that fairly quickly because I had a personal need for how I needed to run my business. I was needing to be there for my daughter, needing to, be a part of her education solution, but I wanted to do something with my brain. I did the stay-at-home mom thing until she was in kindergarten. I really thought I was going to go back to work when she went to school, but school didn't work out. And so I had to figure out, okay, what are we going to do to be sure she gets a good education? But my brain was really starving to get back into, I worked in a corporate environment. I won't say I was trying to get back to that, but I just needed something to feel like I was using my brain to accomplish something.
Yeah.
And, as a parent, we have a tremendous opportunity to help our children, but you don't see that day to day. It's the days are long and the years are short kind of thing. I needed some daily excitement. And so as I got started, I had just a really fortunate experience where I was working with a client on the phone and my washing machine repairman came. And at the end of him fixing my washing machine, he came to me and he said, "Can I just ask what you do?" And I told him, and he said, "My wife is an accountant and she would really love to do what you do. We have 3 girls at home and she loves doing accounting, but she's his business was just starting out, and he said, "I don't keep her busy." And so she was my first employee, but it gave me the idea that there were other people like me who had obligations with children or elderly parents, or we've got folks that are going to college. They want to work, they want the professional experiences and challenges, but they have other commitments that they need to take care of in their life. So that's been kind of our model for hiring. We look for good people with good professional backgrounds that have something else going on where they can give us 20 to 40 hours a week. We don't turn down people that want to work full time, but most of our folks are wanting to work 20 to 30 hours a week. And that gives them the flexibility to do what they need to with their families, but it gives us really dedicated, hardworking people who show up and do a great job for our clients. And so initially that was a challenge. Like, was I going to be able to find someone? And it just kind of fell in my lap. And that's been a model for our growing ever since.
That's so cool. And talk about serendipity.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, I never complain about an appliance breaking now.
That's so cool. I work with a logistics company, an logistics integrator, that the model is very similar. I mean, they actually started completely remote even before, the pandemic, and they only ever rented an office because their clients were, like, so where do we meet? And they wanted to meet at their office, so that's why they did. But 80% of the workforce, it's working moms, and they can do it. This is the thing that I saw with them. They are amazing assets. They're moms they're people with so much knowledge and experience and everything that decided that, they wanted to get married and have kids. But at the same time, maybe they feel like you felt, where I have all of this knowledge, I have all of this experience, and I want to be, have that daily, mental challenge and achievement. And so they're a great fit, for this company, because now, there's this company where you have so much, again, knowledge and experience from great, assets in their people. And just because they were moms, a lot of people didn't want to hire them before because, you can't be at the office, full time. And so they've grown a lot, actually been very happy to see their success. And
That's
honestly,
awesome.
it's all about their people and the way they've decided to have their culture built around that. So
Yeah,
kudos
that's
to
awesome.
you. That's really cool.
Thanks.
And you were talking a little bit in the beginning about, how you got started and how you were getting, a lot of the clients through referrals. Was how you got all of your first clients? Was it only through referrals, or was there anything else that you, I don't know, some marketing initiative or anything that you did to get some clients in the beginning?
At first, it was just referrals. It was local people telling other local people. And then when I joined Profit First has a referral program. So if you read the book and you feel like, okay, I want to work with a Profit First professional, you go onto the website and they match you up. And so that's how I started getting clients that were not local, was through the Profit First referral network. Then, working with Mike in the Profit First ecosystem, he was rewriting the book a few years down the road. I think it had gotten picked up by Penguin, and he asked for feedback on it. Are there ways that the book could be improved? Well, my struggle with clients is inventory. That's my client struggle. So I wrote to him and said, it would really be helpful if you talked about how inventory would work, and, advertising, and some of the things that are unique to ecom. And he he did his updates, and then he sent out advanced reader copy, and I read it over, and I'm like, you didn't talk about any of the stuff I wanted him to talk about. So I sent him a message. I texted him and said, hey, what gives? And he said, Penguin said that was too specific. It needed to be broader. And I'm like, but, and I was arguing my case. And he came back kind of to shut me up, I think, and said, you should write your own book. And I'm like, is that an option? And he goes, well, we could talk about it. And so I kind of lined out all of those things that I had been suggesting to him. And I'm like, most of what you have is a good foundation, but I need to add this stuff on. And so he said, well, let's do it. So I licensed with him to write Profit First for e-commerce. And I was the first derivative book that was created under the Profit First brand. And he's got over 27 of them now, which is kind of exciting. But once that book came out and it was talked about in e-commerce communities, that's where I got a lot of my referrals after that. I remember being on a podcast after the book came out, and at the end, I had 79 people want to schedule a call. And I'm like, we can't handle 79. So we kind of communicated with them about, who would be the best fit to work with us. But for most of the time since the book came out, we've had a 60-day waiting list of people to onboard, because we want to grow organically, and we want to grow in a way that our team can manage the growth. But at the same time, we want to serve as many people as we can, and of course, grow the business. So we've just tried to have that metered approach to how we grew.
Wow, that's so cool. I didn't know you were the first one licensed under Profit First.
Yeah,
that is really awesome. Congratulations
I shed the
on
most
that.
tears.
You were the trailblazer. After you was like, this can be done. Let's do it for other industries.
Yeah. I was the one in Mike's office crying, and he had to call an Uber to get back to the hotel because of all the edits he wanted to make. After that, he had an editor work with him.
So you could potentially have been the first and last, right?
I could. It was almost there at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's such a cool story. And I mean, not everyone is able to be mentored directly by Mike,
Sure.
and second, actually write a book with him. So is there anything else, that you could tell the people in the audience? Is there anything else that you've done in terms of, like client acquisition strategies that has worked for you, or has it only been, like referrals and then of course, PR with the book?
Niching is critical. I know there's a lot of folks that don't want to be pigeonholed, so to speak. But to me, it just made sense when Mike first started talking to me about it because my husband worked in manufacturing and I could just see how well, and I was living the hell of trying to learn, the apps for the fitness business and the social media company and the guy that was running 5K races and the guy who had a bike shop, all of those different kinds of businesses. I was trying to figure out how to get the data out of their systems and how to make it work into a chart of accounts that was tell them the story that they needed to understand their business. It was just so much variation that we spent a ton of time learning the new business. Once we niched into e-commerce, it's like, okay, this is my tech stack. We researched it. We figured out what was good for our people that we could support well. And when folks would come to us, we would say, this is what we use. And they're like, oh, thank God somebody knows and I don't have to figure it out. And so it just put us in the driver's seat for being able to say, this is how we run our business. And this is what our process is. And this is how we train people so that if one is out from a health issue, somebody else can step in and know how to deal with it. There's just so many reasons to niche, including getting deep knowledge around what's going on in that industry. And so if you're thinking about doing any kind of advisory work, to me, the precursor is to niche, because like right now, I have a questionnaire on my website that asks 25 different questions about how are you set up as an e-commerce business to succeed. I can look at that data and tell kind of the state of most people are just kind of being average. There's a lot they
Yeah.
could do to improve, and I can use that to create content to actually help the industry and elevate them to improve their businesses. In addition, I've got over 100 clients that are e-com clients that I can put into a dashboard. We use Fathom to do our reporting for our clients and to do our forecasting, but they also have an insights dashboard where I can see all 100 of my clients and say, all right, group them by revenue, group them by gross margin, who's doing the best, who's suffering. That helps me work with that client better, but it also gives me industry insights that I can use to then communicate with my audience, my e-commerce audience, about this is what I'm seeing out there as a data set. It's real easy for people to share, well, I'm doing this and my revenues, X and this, that. I have the numbers. I know how they're doing, and I can help give people some kind of benchmark that is a realistic way for them to understand. Yeah, no, you don't have to spend 80% of your gross profit on advertising. We've got clients that are doing 12. And so, what's that right number? Well, you got to figure it out. It's no one size fits all, but you don't have to just listen to one number and take that to be the only answer. So I think the deep specialization that you get from niching and then using that to create content, it can be a book, it can be a blog, it can be speaking, but by really giving back to the industry based on the knowledge that you acquire working in it, I think that's just a way to grow your business, because you're growing your knowledge and you're sharing it with the industry, and people gravitate to people who are experts, I think.
Thank you for that. I think that's great advice, and I think that's a great strategy as well. Especially that last part that you were mentioning. Now with we're basically all of us are fighting for people's attention, right? And I think that sometimes, unfortunately, the loudest voice sometimes prevails, and it might not be the best one. It might not be the one that you want to listen to, but it is the loudest. So I think, like you were saying, right, using content and position yourself as an expert, I think it's a great strategy to go about it.
And I think too, the e-commerce accounting community is kind of, I think, unique. We talk to each other. Some of the software platforms that we use bring us together where, there's 60 to 100 of us in a room together. working on marketing or whatever. I think there's a lot of work out there, and not every client is looking for the way that I do things or the
Yeah.
way that you might do things. So the idea is to put enough of yourself into your business so that people understand she's like me. I think we could work well together. Or that lady's Fruit Loops. I don't want to be anywhere near her, right? But people need to be able to understand that. They need to understand that we're all different and that some people gel well and some don't. And the idea is to find the people that you work well with, because those are the people you can help the most and going to make you want to open your email and see what they got going on, as opposed to getting an email and going, oh, I don't want to deal with that today.
Yeah. I always tell this, to the people that I talk to, whether prospects, guests, or whatever, right? People connect with people, at the end of the day. So it's always good, if you're asking me, hey, Oscar, should I post content in the name of my brand or in my name? It's always if you do it in your name, right? Uh, I mean, regardless, we're not going to get into that, but regardless of what people think about, always just example, Elon Musk, even before he bought Twitter, which is now X, right? His following, his following was bigger than if you combined Tesla, SpaceX, Starlink, The Boring Company, all of his companies combined, he had a bigger audience. So he used that platform to repost whatever it was that Tesla or SpaceX or his brands, were using on their page. And so it's the same thing, people connect with people. And like you said, right, it can be someone that just resonates with you and say, you know what, I'm an entrepreneur mom and I know how hard it is and she knows how hard it is. So, I would rather connect with her, or like that, that lady is Fruit Loops and like, I don't want anything to do with her. There's always something for everyone. So,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I agree with that. And I wanted to ask, you said the e-commerce accountants, the e-commerce bookkeepers, advisory firms. What trends, are you seeing in that industry?
In e-commerce accounting or in e-commerce in general?
No, in your industry, in e-commerce, bookkeeping, accounting, advisory.
Okay. There's a lot more of us. I remember when I started, there were two other firms that I got to know. They were very generous and reached out when they realized that I was starting in the space. They're still friends now. One has exited the accounting industry and is doing more tech advising for e-commerce. So there's more. And I think that's a good thing, because as we've taken over books from generalists that really didn't understand what was going on, we've seen so many things that they weren't wrong accounting, but they really weren't fully servicing the client. One thing that used to happen a lot, and Amazon's fixed this now, but you used to have a different bank account for when you would get your payouts versus an account that you could use for a different sales channel in Amazon. And we would log into people's Amazon accounts and see a little caution badge that was saying, hey, your bank account's not connected. Well, the client would be like, well, I'm getting my money, my bank account's connected. They didn't realize that this other channel had a separate bank account. And I can't tell you how many people had come to us over the years who had $20,000, $100,000 sitting at Amazon, but Amazon couldn't figure out how to send them the money because their bank account wasn't connected. So there's things like that I think people that specialize in e-commerce can help clients with, that they don't get from working with a general firm. And there are over 2 million, I think, e-commerce sellers now.
Yeah.
So, there could be a lot of us and still not serve everybody. So I think I do see it growing. I do see folks entering the space that are more AI tech oriented as far as software vendors. And I think that's something that is going to be a factor. I know we're evaluating other programs that help with the general ledger piece, where we think we can automate and use the predictive AI to help with coding and reconciliation and things like that. So that's all coming, I'm sure. I don't think it's here yet. The test that we've done, we don't feel like it's quite ready for us to train our entire team on, but it's close. And so I think there's some shifts in the industry as AI becomes more prevalent, and certainly things like e-commerce, where you're going to a platform, plucking data off of their system and putting it into a system, doesn't need a lot of human interaction. So I think e-commerce would be ripe for AI to take a foothold there early. So I'm anticipating that. But I still think there are clients out there who don't really know how to interpret the data that they're looking at. And that's where we can really serve the industry well, is by really helping them understand, one, how to have a chart of accounts and reports that tell you something meaningful, and then how to look at those reports and interpret them so you make good decisions. And of course, I think there's a lot of opportunity on the advisory side, because many of the, none of us sat in school and dreamed of being an e-commerce entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, I
There's
don't think so.
I, YouTuber maybe, but I hear kids talk about that now. But so many people come to the e-commerce journey and created their business when they were trained on something else. I've had firemen, I've had nurses, I've had real estate agents. They got into e-commerce through some other venture and learning how inventory works, and how all of that plays on your balance sheet in addition to your P&L. I think there's a lot of opportunity for folks to really help our clients understand and make better decisions as e-commerce entrepreneurs.
Okay. I agree and resonate with everything that you're saying there, especially, I don't think, yeah, like you said, nobody ever said, oh, I want to be an e-com entrepreneur. But they got there, right? What are your growth plans, for BooksKeep and for, the advisory firm as well, for the next 1 or 2 years?
The plan is to keep growing it, kind of curated growth is what I say. I don't want to, I'm sure other accounting firms are this way. You get these messages constantly, we got $500,000 we can give you today. And, I'm like, that's not the kind of business I want to run. I want to run a business that grows based on finding the moms that want to do the work, that finding the clients that resonate with the way we do things. And we're really willing to do that kind of slowly. So it's to continue to grow, but to grow in a curated way where we have the ability to ramp up our capacity in a way that we feel good about and bring on the clients where we can serve them and not be just overloaded and stretched too thin.
Okay.
Our advisory growth this past year has been 100% over what it had been in the year before.
Wow.
So our little experiment by rebranding and taking it into a separate business, I think, has proven to be a good. I think there's more need for that, and I think it will probably grow faster. But our accounting firm grew at close to 9%, and in a year where our clients were really, e-commerce was kind of struggling. I feel good about that. I feel like, that we managed that fine, and had some serious issues with a couple of employees having health issues and losing 2 full-time resources because of health issues. I feel like a 9% growth with those challenges is really good for where we are.
Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear about, those, the losses of two, great assets to your company. And also, just want to congratulate you for, 100% growth on the
Yeah.
advisory side. That's amazing. Looking back at your journey, from everything that you've done, being a corporate, stay-at-home mom, now having your companies, being a leading voice, in e-com finance, what has been the most surprising or unexpected lesson you've learned about yourself and about business?
I think it is how personal it all is. How for me, I love connecting with the team. I love supporting them. I love supporting our clients. And it really is kind of a personal development journey being an entrepreneur. And I never expected that. I just thought it would be like a job, which I had worked a job.
Yeah.
And I was always learning and growing in the career that I had. So it's not like, it was stagnant, but it just calls at you so much deeper when it's your business. And you really do have to dig deep to figure out what is right for you and for your organization, and be confident in knowing that there's not some formula out there that you can follow that's right for everybody, and just quit paying attention to everybody else and start paying attention to what's right for you. I know people that have grown a lot more than we have and have taken on, partners, et cetera. And that's right for them, and that's wonderful. But it would not have been right for us. It wouldn't be this kind of satisfying. I wouldn't want to get up every day and look at my email. That's kind of a test for me. Like, do
Yeah.
I want to look at my email, or am I kind of afraid to look at my email? So that's kind of a test for me. Is it going in the right direction?
Okay, that's great. Thank you. That's
Mhm.
that's a great answer. And we're getting to a little bit of the end of the call. I have two more questions just to ask you. And this next one, it's a funny one, so bear with me, but I love asking it. Is, if you had a magic wand that you
Mhm.
could just like wave, and magically solve one thing, about your business instantly, what would that one thing be?
I think it would be to try to transition to where our team has more time to learn new technology. Right now, everybody's
Okay.
kind of at capacity, they're cranking the stuff out, they're kind of comfortable with that. But I see coming up in the future, they're going to need some bandwidth to learn the new stuff. And so, it's something we're starting to plan for, but I wouldn't want it to just be solved for them, because I think the challenge and the fun part is learning it and growing
Yeah.
through learning it. I wouldn't want them just to come in and be happy with the new systems, but I would like to figure out how to give them that space so that they had room to grow and experiment more.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's a great
Mhm.
answer. And then, just the last question here would be, for the aspiring entrepreneurs and mompreneurs, listening, what is one piece of advice you would give them to not just build a successful business, but a business that truly supports the life that they want to live?
The coaching that we do in our CFO program is about something that I learned from a mentor. His name is Brad Martineau. He has a sixth division. It's a automation firm, and he's been a mentor for me for 5 or 6 years now, where he helps us with our CRM and stuff like that and business strategy. But he taught me about life profit. And life profit is managing your time, your energy, and your money. So you have to think about all three of those things as you're building your business, because if you just focus on, am I profitable? Am I making money? And most people just go, what are my sales? Am I selling enough? How are my sales
Yeah.
growing? But if you get down to the bottom line as far as profitability, that money in the bank is nice, but not at the expense of your health, and not at the expense of your family, and not at the expense of doing something you hate to do every day. And so this idea of life profit, managing time, energy, and money as you grow allows you to create the business that you're going to love, as opposed to a business that you feel like is just a job and you can't figure out how to hire to even replace yourself. So I would focus on those three things and not just growing a financially healthy business.
Thank you so much for that, Cyndi, and for everything that you've shared in the call with us. This has been an incredible, episode. And before we wrap up, where can our listeners learn more about you, your company, and your work?
CyndiThomason.com. There's a website that is about me, the 2 books that I've written, a little mastermind I have for e-commerce brand owners, and the 2 businesses, Your Profit Team and BooksKeep. Of course, there's a website, BooksKeep.com, for the bookkeeping, and yourprofitteam.com for the advisory firm. Yeah, just reach out. Cyndi at bookskeep.com is easy way to get a hold of me. I'd be glad to answer any questions if a listener has it.
Thank you so much, Cyndi, for that. This has been a great conversation. I've had a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. Thank you for sharing. As I said, I was in a similar kind of situation like some of your clients. So I can definitely, talk about the fact that everything you said is true, and I learned some new things today as well. So thank you. Thank you for that, Cyndi.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it, Oscar.
Of course, me too. And for everyone listening, I know that you guys got value from this episode, so you can always help us and help our guests as well by liking, commenting, and just subscribing, also sharing the episode. Thank you so much for listening to us. This has been the Lead to Scale show with our guest today, Cyndi Thomason, and your host, Oscar. So I'll see you guys next time.